When a soul dares to voyage into a land far from the warmth of old customs, when a person leaves behind the known world for the calling of the untamed wild, everything changes. No matter how cherished your habits, how sacred your beliefs, or how tightly you wrap yourself in the cloak of past experience, in a far country nothing stays the same. If you wish to survive, you must be willing to become new. You must let go of the gods that once guided you, the rules that once defined you, and learn the language of the land that now surrounds you. For in the north, the laws of man and nature are rewritten, and in that rewriting, only those who bend will not break. The Arctic is a crucible where the soul is tested. For some, change becomes a kind of liberation, a melody of newness, a spark that dances in the eyes of those who adapt with ease. But for others, shackled by the iron chains of habit, the new world is a grindstone, and it wears at them until spirit and flesh cry out. To those unable to shift, the north is merciless. It is better to turn back before the winter settles, for the land has no sympathy. Wait too long and it will consume you, body and mind. In that age, when the yearning for Arctic gold thundered through the hearts of men, Carter Weatherby, an ordinary man, skin pale from office lamps and hands soft from ledgers, made his decision. He cast aside his position, gave half his savings to his wife, and with the rest bought gear and dreams. He was not a man of romance, nor one who loved adventure for its own sake. He was simply tired of monotony, tired of the safe and the small, and so he sought a fortune at the edge of the world. At Edmonton, where the city's edge frayed into wildness, Carter joined with other dreamers, men whose ambitions outstripped their knowledge. They plotted a route so bold, so brash, that even Jacques Baptiste, part Chippewa, part French, born north of the 65th parallel, suckled on raw tallow in a deerskin lodge, shook his head in warning. Baptiste agreed to guide them, but he watched their plans with the quiet scorn of one who has seen better men swallowed by the north. Among Weatherby's party was Percy Cuthfert, a man of education and means, lured not by gold, but by the sweet poison of sentimentality masquerading as adventure. The first break of spring found their expedition following the wild, churning ice of the Elk River. Their convoy of canoes and bateaux carried not only supplies, but also a ragged company of half-breed voyageurs with their families, all drawn together by the promise of riches. Day after day, the travelers battled mosquitoes and exhaustion, hauling their boats over portages, cursing the river and their luck. In this relentless labor, the true spirits of men were stripped bare, no pretense, no hiding. It became clear who would carry the load and who would shirk. Weatherby and Cuthfert, pampered by civilization, were always the first to retire at night and the last to rise at dawn. They were haunted by invented injuries, missing only when there was work to be done, but always present when it came time to eat. Their laziness did not go unnoticed. Their comrades grew bitter, and Jacques Baptiste's sneers were sharp as icicles. At Great Slave Lake, the party exchanged money for dogs and pemmican, and pressed onward, deeper into the endless barrens. The Yukon's gold still danced in their dreams, but with every mile, reality crept closer. When the rivers ran out, when the land became silence and snow and darkness, their voyageurs deserted them, one by one, until only Baptiste remained, held by his oath, if not by hope. The maps lied, as maps often do at the edge of the world. Winter stalked them, and as the sun tipped south, they tied their rafts to the thickening ice and dragged supplies ashore, the river now a white road to nowhere. A council was called. Some wished to push onward, others to wait. Weatherby and Cuthbert stood together, whining their protests, outvoted and outmuscled. They would stay behind, left in charge of the cabin and the cache while the others vanished into the frozen unknown. The departure was a wrench. Sleds groaned under weight, dogs strained, and as the last of the party faded into the whiteness, Sloper, the leader, murmured a warning to Jacques Baptiste. "Remember the Kilkenny cats, Jacques." When they were done fighting, nothing was left. No yowl, no hide, not even a whisker. These two men, alone in a cabin with nothing but the long night, who knows what will remain come spring. At first, life in the cabin seemed almost a reprieve. The burden of the whip hand was gone, and Weatherby and Cuthbert, perhaps out of pride, perhaps desperation, tried to outdo each other in their chores. The forests crowded close, overflowing with firewood, and the river slept at their feet beneath a cloak of ice. They had food, more than enough if they were careful. But the luxury faded quickly. The simple tasks became monotonous. The hole in. The ice refroze every night, demanding more effort for a sip of water. The cache, brimming with supplies, became a battleground for small pleasures, especially the sugar, which they consumed like greedy children. Soon the first cracks appeared. Arguments erupted over the dwindling sugar, over politics, over everything and nothing. Cuthbert, the man of education, tossed clever phrases at Weatherby, who replied with blunt insults. Weatherby sang crude songs for hours, grating against Cuthbert's nerves until he would rather face the biting cold outside than another verse of the Boston Burglar. Inside, the air thickened with resentment, and the walls seemed to press closer with every passing day. As the sun vanished below the horizon for good, the North unleashed its full arsenal. Time slowed to a crawl. Even the trifling act of making the bed or washing became intolerable. They surrendered to filth and lethargy, letting the cabin sink into ruin. The disease came next, a purple rash, joints swollen and black, gums turning the color of old cream. Scurvy, the scourge of the wild, crept into their veins and sapped their strength. The less they had, the more they hoarded, gorging themselves in a desperate race against hunger and against each other. With their bodies decaying, the mind's troubles took root. Weatherby fell to nightmares, haunted by the forgotten dead of the North, spirits who crept into his bed, wrapping him in their cold embrace. Cuthbert watched, terrified, pistol always within reach. Sometimes he would fixate on the wind vane above the cabin, desperate for any change, any motion in the endless stillness. He would turn it east, then west, but the air never stirred. The silence was a living thing, pressing in, suffocating. In those endless nights, the world they had left became a distant echo. No bustling cities, no laughter, no warm light. There was only the North, infinite and empty. Memories of civilization danced like ghosts, dinners and laughter, art and music, the smell of green things and the promise of spring. But here, there was only the cold, the dark, and the certainty that the sun might never return. One day, in the midst of this frozen purgatory, Cuthbert caught sight of a rabbit's track in the snow. It was a miracle, a spark of life in the lifeless void. He followed it, wild with hope, until exhaustion and cold drove him to the ground. When he finally crawled back to the cabin, cheeks and toes frozen, Weatherby only sneered, offering no help. Soon after, mortification set in, and Cuthbert's feet began to die, joint by joint. Weatherby had troubles of his own. The dead men from the old graves visited him with increasing frequency, and their presence drove him to fits of violence and terror. The cabin became a battleground, not just of bodies but of souls. Every movement was watched with suspicion, every gesture a possible threat. The slush lamp burned all night, and bacon grease was always kept in supply for fear of being caught in darkness. They slept with their pistols close, eyes open, waiting, always waiting. Physical pain was relentless. Their cheeks and noses black from frostbite, their feet shedding toes, every step a crucifixion. Yet the firebox thirsted for fuel, so they crawled into the forest on their knees, dragging wood back in agony. One day, meeting unexpectedly in the woods, they were so changed by suffering that they failed to recognize each other, fleeing in terror at the sight of a fellow man. Once, in a rare moment of civility, they divided the last of the sugar, each guarding his own small stash with the jealousy of a dragon. But when Cuthbert, in confusion, took from Weatherby's sack by mistake, the fragile piece shattered. Yet as January dawned, something miraculous happened. One noon, the two men, feeling slightly better, dragged themselves into the snow outside their prison. Above them, the wind vane was still, never moving, always pointing away from hope. And then suddenly, the sky to the north blazed with color. A false dawn, a promise of light, of sun returning, of life. For a fleeting instant, a golden rim of sunlight appeared over the southern mountains. Tears filled their eyes. For the first time in months, a bridge of understanding passed between them. They reached out, their ruined hands meeting in the cold. The sun would return. The darkness would end. But the North does not forgive so easily. Inside, Cuthbert put bread in the oven, dreaming of returning to civilization, of doctors and friends, of all that lay beyond the snowbound horizon. Weatherby, in the cache, discovered the theft of his sugar. Rage built within him, but before the words could leave his mouth, the ghosts returned, guiding him, leading him gently to the woodpile and to the axe. When he re-entered the cabin, axe in hand, Cuthbert saw the madness in his eyes. He tried to reason, tried to reach for his revolver, but Weatherby blocked the way. There was a struggle, a flash, a shot, the axe falling with terrible finality. Both men crippled and dying, locked in one last embrace. The cabin filled with the scent of burning bread, but the bread no longer mattered. The world faded, and as the cold crept in, Cuthbert's thoughts wandered, back to warm rooms, to honey and green fields, to a life now lost forever. Outside, the wind vane remained unmoved. Inside, frost crept over walls and doors, sealing the two men in their icy tomb. Would their story ever be told? Would anyone care? In those last moments, Cuthbert wondered if, when the silence of the North was finally broken, he and Weatherby would stand together before the judgment of God, two men, battered by the wild, victims and architects of their own fate. So remember this. In the far country, in the places where the cold gnaws at bone and the silence breaks the mind, men are tested by more than the elements. They are tested by each other and by themselves. Only those who learn to let go, who change not just their habits but the very shape of their hearts, survive. For in the North, as in life, the greatest danger is not the cold without, but the ice that forms within. Journey wisely, wherever your dreams may lead.